Hello and welcome back to my channel. Bonsoir et bienvenue sur ma chaîne. My name is Muriel and this evening I will be doing a dual review for Speak, the graphic novel written by Laurie Halse Anderson and illustrated by Emily Carroll, and Unbecoming, both written and illustrated by Una. Why did I decide to do a dual review for both of these graphic novels / memoirs? One, because both of these books deal with rape and the trauma associated with rape or sexual abuse. And two, because both of them really moved me and I found both of them to be strongly resonating. And so I wanted to talk about them. I shall start off by talking about Speak, the graphic novel. The graphic novel because originally Speak was either a novel or a fictionalized memoir written by Laurie Halse Anderson about her experience with rape. I guess she thought it would be more interesting in a graphic novel format, and thus she collaborated with the amazing Emily Carroll to create this graphic novel called Speak. The story of Speak centers around a main female character called Mel. Mel was raped when she was 13 years old, and the story starts from when she enters either freshman or sophomore year of high school. I guess it would be freshman if she was raped the summer before when she was 13. And she cannot speak about this. It's stuck inside of her, and so you follow her on a journey to regain her voice, to regain her self-identity, and well, to seek healing and a measure of justice as well. This story was brilliantly illustrated by Emily Carroll, who I already knew from her work titled Through the Woods, which is a collection of short illustrated horror stories. But I'll talk about the art style in a minute. So the way Speak is structured, it's a linear narrative that just follows the main character, Mel, through her year of high school, with, of course, flashbacks to the moment of her rape. Each chapter is also kind of a vignette with a specific title, talking about a specific idea or emotion or psychological state of the main character. So Mel, I strongly identified with her because she's quite isolated, she likes drawing, she likes the poetry of Maya Angelou, and of course this rape has left her with a type of post-traumatic stress disorder. She's sinking into depression. She, spends her afternoons taking naps in an amused janitor closet. And she's also strongly ostracized by everyone else at school. She lost her group of friends from middle school because the summer her rape occurred, that night there was a party going on for older adolescents. And there was underage drinking. She wasn't really supposed to be there, but a friend had dragged her along. And she was raped. She called the police. When the police arrived, they basically just busted the party for underage drinking, and she never actually got to say that she was assaulted. So everyone sees her as a party buster, someone who just can't have fun and ruins things for everyone. And a lot of the girls she used to hang out with have just become very superficial and very, for lack of a better word, girly and concerned with getting a boyfriend, and she's just sinking deeper into depression and interested in her biology class and her art class. And this art class is pivotal to her healing journey because there's this amazing art teacher. And so he assigns each student a piece of paper with a word on it, and then they're supposed to work on a year-long project around that word. Mel gets the word trees, so she's supposed to do an artistic project around trees. And slowly this allows her to regain her voice and to express herself, to express this pain she has buried deep inside of her. And there's a lot of imagery to do with bare branch trees in winter. Now, anecdotally, it's winter here where I live, and there are lots of leafless trees around, and I myself have found that staring at the bare canopies of trees swaying in the wind is very calming, is very meditative almost, so that really struck a chord with me. And she also has a difficult family life. No one listens to her, or at least he thinks that no one is capable of listening to her, but that art teacher kind of gets some things. But like I said, I don't want to spoil this story. So I really enjoyed it because I could relate to the main character. It was a story about trauma and sexual assault. Now, please don't take this the wrong way. I guess her sexual assault, her rape, was a little bit more straightforward. I hate using that expression, but a bit more straightforward than something like grooming, which is what I went through. So I'm not trying to say that one is worse than the other, they're different, but I guess her rape fits the stereotype of a violent sexual assault more than something a bit more complex and nuanced than grooming, for example. But still, I could strongly relate to her feelings, to her emotions, the fact that she's depressed. There's also a little bit of self-harm representation. Now, I was particularly interested in that because I myself am a strugglingly recovering self-harmer, have been for many years. So there's good also generally mental illness representation, even though it's mental illness specifically deriving from a traumatic event, in this case even more specifically, a traumatic event of a sexual nature. And I could just, deeply relate to the story and Mel's states of mind, even though she was a teenager, and I'm not really drawn to stories that center on either child characters or even teenage characters in a high school setting, etc. And even though her particular type of sexual trauma was slightly different from my own. Now, a note on the art style. So like I said, I was already familiar with Emily Carroll's work, and her art style was absolutely perfect to illustrate Laurie Halse Anderson's story. It was all done in black and white, simple ink work, but it was perfect. And like I said, there's this recurring image and symbol of the bare-branched tree, and trees feature heavily, and I just can't really say anything more than it was perfect. It was perfectly illustrated. The style fit the story to perfection, and that's that. Now, a quick note though, but this is more about the book product than the contents or the art style. I don't know why, but for some reason my paperback copy had issues with smudging, so it was probably an issue with the quality of the paper. It didn't absorb the ink sufficiently well, so I had smudges at times. And also, but this only happened like 2 or 3 times. Since everything is in black and white, sometimes you have black text on a black background, so it's barely legible. Minor quibble, but you should be aware of this if you plan on picking this up in paperback format. And so, I think 2 weeks after finishing Speak, I read this, Becoming, Unbecoming by Una. I still have the copy with me. This was a bit different. This is a graphic memoir about the author's experience with sexual violence as a young girl and then a young woman within the context, within the period during which the Yorkshire Ripper was active. I have to be honest, I hadn't really heard of the Yorkshire Ripper before that. Before reading it, yes, but I learned about the Yorkshire Ripper by learning about the existence of Becoming, Unbecoming, basically. So it does take a look at the case of the Yorkshire Ripper, and it also actually gives you a good dose of solid feminist theory on rape culture, on sexual violence against women and girls. And all this is woven around her own personal lived experience. And there's not much more I can really say about it beyond that without spoiling it. You really have to discover it for yourself. So it's a brilliant blend of personal experience, like I just said, historical data on a serial rapist and killer case, and then, like I said, feminist theory on sexual violence. But it all blends together seamlessly. And so the art style is very unique, I guess. It mixes fairly simple line drawings with just a dash of color here and there, illustrating the author being accosted by older men, which is like 11 years old and then 12, 13, and being called a whore, slut, slag at school because she was groomed and raped, and she was raped again later on in life. And then also the messaging that was going around during the Yorkshire Ripper case, and how the media painted all the victims of the Ripper as prostitutes, but then suddenly actually killed a young girl who was 14, and the news was going crazy and sending him pleas, like, please stop, you've killed women of ill repute, but now you're attacking innocent young women and virtuous young women from good families. So they didn't really care about the prostitutes who were killed. And a lot of these prostitutes were in prostitution because they were poor and they had families to feed, or they came from abusive backgrounds. So all that messaging is illustrated as well. And then she explains concepts of feminist theory with her illustrations too. There's a beautiful little homage to all the victims of the Yorkshire Ripper towards the end of the book, but I don't want to say anything more than that. Really have to discover it for yourself. But it was so incredibly moving. I was really crying fairly hard by the end of that book. But then there are also these more abstract drawings. I think everything is basically done in ink, China ink, and sometimes you've got these big blots of China ink that are like running from the body of the young author. So you've got this young girl lying down and there are these trails of dark ink running out of her, and then she's also illustrated with insect wings to represent her transition to puberty. I don't know. Obviously, this is going to vary a lot from person to person. You may not be touched by this art style, or you may be shattered by it like I was. For some reason, actually, the more abstract drawings or the more fanciful ones with like the insect wings are the ones that, well, struck me the most. They really resonated with me. It's hard to describe because it's something you really feel or you don't. I guess I could try and show you a little bit of the inside. So this would be more of the narrative kind of drawing. As you can see, it's fairly, well, simple, but don't take simple to mean bad, right? But even there you can kind of see the little insect wings and antennae. And then you have these kinds of, well, spreads with these, I don't know, washes of dark China ink. But it always tells you something, obviously. I mean, it's more abstract, like I said, but there's still meaning to it, obviously. So yeah, it was a brilliant, absolutely brilliant graphic memoir. Shout out to Jen Campbell, who actually personally recommended this book to me because she was taking book recommendations for Christmas gifts, but she said you could also ask for a gift to yourself. So I left a comment, and I fairly often comment on her channel because she's an absolutely lovely English lady. She's a booktuber and she's also an author. I would highly recommend you go check out her channel. She's just warm and lovely. She puts out such a wonderfully warm vibe. Anyway, so thank you for recommending this book to me. I had already eyed it before, but I finally took the next step and actually read it. So my final ratings for both of these graphic novels / memoirs, I gave Speak a solid 8 to 8.5 out of 10. It really moved me. Like I said, I also shed a few tears, I won't lie. And then Becoming Unbecoming, I would honestly say it's a 9 out of 10. Because it just weaves in, like I said, these elements of feminist theory and this broader historical context. I don't know. It was just brilliant. Both of them. Both of them are brilliant, but Becoming Unbecoming is a step above, I would say. But I would highly recommend both of these. Obviously, sensitive subject matter, as you can tell. So don't pick these up if you can't handle it. And there's nothing wrong if you can't. We all have our different tolerance levels for such things. I mean, I wanted to read them because I'm also dealing with my own trauma, and I think now I'm kind of done with that subject, to be perfectly honest. So I don't really want any recommendations for books in that general area of interest for the moment. I think I'm all tapped out. I need to focus on my own healing, basically. But yeah, I would definitely recommend them if you want good material on, sexual trauma, sexual violence, suffering from it, but also recovering from it and healing. I think that's a very important point I perhaps didn't emphasize enough. Both of these books are actually quite hopeful. They deal with very dark subject matters, and they make you want to cry and scream in anger. But ultimately, both of them have a message of hope at their core, that things can get better in wider society, and that things can get better for your own personal life, even if you've been through something horrific and profoundly unjust. So that concludes my dual review for Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson and Emily Carroll, and Becoming Unbecoming by Una. I'll reiterate, I highly recommend both of them. Though if I had to recommend one over the other, I guess I would go for Becoming Unbecoming. Right, so hopefully next time we'll get my end of December and 2021 January wrap up, and then it's back to the SFF, basically. I really want to put out my June Chronicles review, so I'll work on that as soon as I possibly can. And afterwards, you will get a dual review for Children of Time and Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I hope you're all taking good care of yourselves. Have a lovely day, evening, whichever time of day you prefer, and I shall see you in the next video, whenever that is. Bye-bye!